The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Welcome to the third preparatory webinar for members and partners of local governments and municipal authorities constituency, taking place today on 29th August, Tuesday, at 10 a.m. and also at 16 p.m. Central European Standard Time. My name is Ji-Sun Huang. I'll be moderating the webinar today. I'll be facilitating. I am working at ICLEI World Secretariat as Senior Climate Advocacy Officer, and I would like to, on behalf of ICLEI, extend my heartfelt welcome to all of you to today's webinar. Before we start today, I would like to give you a brief introduction on the technical part of today's webinar. First of all, you are automatically muted, and I would like to kindly request that you remain so until the end of all the presentations for a smooth proceeding of the webinar today. Secondly, there is a question pane in your box of the webinar technical set. So during the webinar, if you have any questions, you can simply type your questions, and as the facilitator, I would make sure that your questions are taken on board at the end of this, at the end of all the presentations. Thirdly, the recording. Today's webinar is being recorded and it'll be shared with all of you online after this webinar for the transparency of information and the promotion of smooth information sharing. With that, I would like to move on to introducing all the panelists today. We have two panel members today. First of all, let me introduce Mr. Yunus Arikan. He is the Head of Global Policy and Advocacy at ICLEI World Secretariat. He is also the Local Government and Municipal Authorities Constituency focal point to the UNFCCC. Also, let me introduce Ms. Susanna Nolden. She is a City of Bonn official working in the areas of international affairs and global sustainability. Now with that, I would like to move on to the actual presentation of today's webinar. I hand over to you, Yunus, for the start of the presentation for today.
Thank you, Ji-Sun. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to all colleagues. It's a great pleasure. Today's agenda will be based on four themes or four structures. We will share and some updates since the last time we met or since the last time we had the webinar. We will go through some of the official agenda elements of the COP. Of course, this shapes our engagement, and this brings us more details of the progress we achieved in the summit, the Pavilion and summit dialogues. And we will also conclude with upcoming events, and that's how we would run today's agenda. In terms of, let's recall, the last webinar we had was on the 22nd of June. That was a part of a busy period. So compared to the previous one, relatively less number of things have advanced because it's in the northern hemisphere, slightly a low pace period, July and August. But there were still significant improvements or progress. First of all, there were a number of events in all around the world where members of the Global Advisory Group or host committee or partners of local government and municipal authorities constituency have attended, like Africa Forum in Benin, Starbuck Desertification, Melbourne Eco City Summit, and Mayor of Bonn was personally visiting La Paz and Bogota, which was all opportunities to promote the COP23 and also the agenda of local and regional governments there. An important event was held in Suva, GVG, which is the host of COP23 and presidency of the COP23. It was the first inaugural Climate Action Pacific Partnership, and the LGMA Constituency was represented by the director of ICLEI Oceania and Pacific, the Pacific director of Commonwealth Local Government Forum, which was a good opportunity for us to advance our dialogue with the presidency and promote that local and regional governments are core partners of the agenda of the COP presidency, and I think that will have some positive impacts in the way we will design the whole COP agenda here and improving our relations with the leaders. There was an important, of course, milestone that G20 summit was held in early July, and the difference between the previous one was there was a big dispute or this big discussions about how it will evolve, but it turned out to be that one against the rest of the 19. So the majority of the nations have the most emerging economies and the big economies of the world have strengthened their commitment to implement Paris Agreement, which is good news, which shows us the way forward, and there's no step back of words in that sense. And that's why it's important COP23 should be a success and local and regional governments demonstrate their leadership. During the July and August, especially July, there were several milestones at the UNFC Secretariat. The Bulo Zone quotas were confirmed for accredited organizations. Side event applications are done. Now the merging process is ongoing. This year, UNFC Secretariat has introduced non-accredited organizations can also apply for side events. Would be applied. The application will be this week, and it will be possible that they could also, as a result of the bond zone being much more open to participation and both in capacity and the diversity of participants. The three presidency announced uniting for climate as the hashtag of the COP, which was also immediately endorsed by the host committee, that we also advance the promotion of our preparations under this hashtag. We will still consult with the Global Advisory Group and host committee whether we would create an additional hashtag in the next couple of weeks. So you would be monitoring this, but we endorse immediately, and we also would like to encourage all partners to promote as much as possible. We had circulated an additional invitation list. We will go through the details a bit later, but this means that the promotion of the summit has been worldwide advanced. We have confirmed the Pavilion space. We will go into the detail, and our website, cities and regions, are now active, operational, and you can follow many of those the updates. But more importantly, we have a new logo. Probably you have noticed in the presentation layout that this would be much more visible on the next couple of weeks and months. We try to align ourselves with the spirit of the COP23 presidency, but also reflect the role of local government as well as River Rhine and city and state of Bonn and state of North Rhine-Westphalia as symbolically represented in this logo. Let's go immediately to the invitation process. This webinar is attended by majority of the participants of this webinar is our partners who are working with us in the Global Advisory Group, so they have already had been receiving such updates. But let's recall, as of mid-August, we have reached to more than 1,600 cities, regions, or their political representatives like mayors, governors, and other levels of governments. Diversity is, as you can see, is not surprisingly, huge majority is European, but we have not ignored other regions, especially small island states, Oceania, Caribbean, as well as Africa has also received, especially in the second round. We have increased the number of invitations, so we assume this will reflect to the participation, so that we will ensure their presence. We will work with our partners to issue another round, probably the last round of invitations, and this time we will focus on among the members of the Global Advisory Group, what would be the key couple of high-level staff so that they can be part of the delegation. But we can go through the summit later on with Susan Nolden. If you now look at the overall COP23 agenda, this year there is, of course, diversity of events are increasing. This has started with May sessions here in Bonn, that the parties, especially the negotiation work stream, which is APA, they are convening thematic roundtables or workshops on Saturday and Sunday, 4th, 5th, and 6th of November. The uniqueness or the important point is that these are mainly or predominantly open for only negotiators, which means observers like us are not allowed, or at least this was the case in in May. We hope this could be changed a bit this time, and that can be accessed. But as of today, I think it's open for only negotiators. On the first day, official openings will start, and then the negotiations of Paris Agreement will start on the Tuesday. The first week, we will see the Marrakesh Partnership thematic events. And the Marrakesh partnership teams are trying to finalize their agenda, so more updates can be shared soon. Especially there will be a global forum during the Climate Change Agadir in September, so there would be more possibilities to hear more. Marrakesh partnership high-level events are taking place on Monday and Tuesday of the second week, 13 and 14, and starting from Wednesday, the official UNFCCC high-level segment is starting, which is much more the process for negotiations and ministerial statements, but there will also be interventions from LGMA constituency as well. So we can now have this overview, and I would like to give the floor to Susan Nolden to take us through the basic progress we have achieved with the summit of Climate Summit of Local and Regional Leaders in terms of what is our structure and how are we planning to advance. Susan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yunus. I hope everybody can understand me. I have some connection issues with my internet, so I'm trying to be very loud and very clear. Is it okay, Jisun?
Yes, Susan, we hear you very clearly.
I hope everybody can hear.
We lost Susan.
Susan, are you still there?
Hear me?
You're dropping off occasionally.
Okay, let's start. Hello, can everybody hear me? I am sorry, I'm having internet issues, so I'm trying to speak very loud. The Climate Summit of Local and Regional Leaders on the 12th of November, jointly hosted by Minister President Laschet and Mayor Ashok Sridharan, will happen in the biggest plenary of the Bonn zone in Rheinauer Park. We are counting on approximately 500 participants, and just in case of, we might also have an overflow room, which is not confirmed yet. We will have a day structure of 6 consecutive sessions, and also possible synergies with the Cities and Regions Pavilion, which Yunus will refer to at a later point. Basically, the day is framed by 2 high-level segments. The opening should be a pivotal moment for local and regional climate leadership, and it will take us directly into the topic. We'll have high-ranking speakers. We are targeting the Minister of Environment in Germany. We're targeting a highest-ranking representative of the Fiji presidency. And we are expecting having a keynote taking us directly into the topic from a very high-level speaker. We are hoping to have a high-level speaker from the US as well in that segment, but the program has not been finalized yet. From there, we will start with new global frameworks. This is a bit to cover the holistic perspective on sustainability and climate. So this is the panel on integrating our strategies and tackling with the most urgent themes in one hand. Then we pass over to collaborative climate action. This is the way we are cooperating within our cities and regions with the key stakeholders in business and civil society. You will find that we changed the titles a bit, but it's still the 4 themes which we discussed together also in our live meetings. On the afternoon, we will join our forces for action in climate vulnerable regions and the global south, of course. This will focus on small island states, on least developed countries, on Africa, and ways how we can join our forces in partnerships to proceed climate action and climate adaptation in these areas. The end of the afternoon will have two elements. The first one will be a panel on raising the bar on climate action through multi-level governance. This is what we have called vertical integrations in our meetings before. This will be a panel consisting of two parts. The first one will be more technical, but with high-ranking participants as well. This is an invitation explicitly to the parties as well. And lead over directly to the closing session. We are all uniting for climate. We're picking up the hashtag there again. This will be the moment to talk to the convention, to the secretariat, to UN entities, to present the outcomes of the conference and to light the torch and hand it over to the parties. The format of all these program points will be mostly panels when it comes to technical questions, and a dramaturgy of subsequent contributions in the opening and the actual closing. We have considered all the speakers nominated by this global advisory group, and our first selection was balanced accordingly to cities, regions, and states, a global and geographical balance, a north-south balance, a representation of the network, gender as well, because we had much less female suggestions and submissions than male ones. So we try to have at least a good representation of female leaders. This is only the first step. We will now try to fine-tune this program, eventually also come back to your organizations, ask for further submissions, or find the best candidate possible for each of these sessions. We had a huge number of submissions, and of course a day is short. We couldn't place all of them, but ICLE will seek individual contact with each of your organizations in the next weeks and be open to your comments so that we target having our program completed with speakers, hopefully in the first half of September, and with confirmed speakers until end September. This is our hope, and we're hoping to do this together. Finally, well, I told you we would deliver the outcomes to UNFCCC and the parties at the end of the day, but of course we are also planning COP23 high-level events to carry the torch further, and I think Yunus will take us to there. I hope everybody could understand me well, and this is my contribution basically.
Thank you. I think it was all clear, and if there are any questions, remarks, we can of course get back in the Q&A session, but your voice were very easily to hear and understanding, so don't worry for this communication problem. So let's advance for the pavilion. It was a couple of weeks of consultations, feedbacks, and relations, but we are now happy to announce you that we will host Cities and Regions Pavilion at the Bonn Zone. In this slide, you can see where it is stated in the overall layout or the plan of the UNFCCC bond zone, which is immediately after the entrance, the big entrance on the left, where you would walk through a number of pavilions, and our visibility will be ensured. So in that sense, I think we are well situated. So in order to go to any of those side event rooms or exhibits, you will always go through or in front of the pavilion. So that will be a good opportunity, and we will have we will share that part of the bond zone also with a number of other delegations. So I think there will be a good opportunities of interaction throughout the 2 weeks. Those who have you can recall, we had a similar pavilion in Paris at COP in a much bigger scale, and we had been together with the Moroccan host cities and regions and ministries in Marrakesh. So this would be in terms of the size, it will be somewhere in between. And because of course the unique atmosphere of the cities and regions pavilion, we may not be running a full let's say 2 weeks intensive program as we have seen in Paris, but we will be definitely a bit more active than how we run the pavilion in Morocco, in Marrakesh. Basically, we will have an exhibit space. We will have a meeting room, and because of the standard safety and noise pollution, the meeting room should be closed. That is the difference from last year from Paris. This was the case also in Marrakesh. That's what we follow from the previous things. This is a very basic layout. It's not confirmed. It's a tentative, but we would have a capacity of 50 to 60 seated arrangements, and there will be a place for speakers and screen so that it could be an opportunity to make presentations and have dialogues. The slots, the duration of slots, and the number of sessions, we will be talking with our partners, especially the Global Advisory Group members and LGMA partners. This next couple of days, you would start to receive a basic template in terms of how you can nominate your events, and then we will go through with the host committee, and towards the end of September, we would like to clarify the program of the pavilion. There is one thing for sure. There will be daily briefings of the LGMA constituency in the bond zone. The reason is that the Bula zone accreditations are much less than we know, or at least less than what we have in bond zone. In order to engage all of our partners, we would like to have the briefings on the negotiations, the UNFCCC process in the bond zone and the pavilion. The pavilion and the whole UNFCCC bond zone will be open for Sunday as well. And access will be between 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. But this doesn't mean that in full these times there will be events in the pavilion. So we will have a different operation mode. As I said, we will have more updates for you very soon. And if you can recall, and you can follow from the slides, that when we say local and regional government at COP, we would like to brand it under 3 main elements. We will have the summit, we will have the dialogues, and we will have the pavilion. So the dialogues are the ones that contribute to our agenda or complement that the themes that we have been discussing in the Leaders Summit on 12th. So some of the events will be pre-summit so that their outcomes would feed into the process or the outcomes, but some of the events will be the places where we would share the outcome of our summit and promote, which is especially in the second half of the COP, which is the second week of the COP. We are basically trying to focus on the period between 9th to 14th of November. And there may be a possibility that these dates may be a bit more extended, like 8 to 15, but this will be shared soon. We are referring to events that are led by our members or partners, especially the Global Advisory Group and the LGMA. It does not necessarily have to be all in the pavilion or the bond zone. There may be some events outside, so we were trying to track this. And because Cities and Regions Pavilion now is confirmed in terms of the location and the space, we are checking with our partners. We will start to advance with them so that some of the events can be included in the pavilion agenda. Or some will still be in other venues. Therefore, we are not providing you a concrete list as of today, but a preliminary program would be announced around mid-September. That's also our target, but finalization will still further advance, so there will be still rooms for that. And today's presentation is concluding with the next rounds of events and deadlines until COP. So don't forget, accredited organizations will have their nominations for the bond zone. And this is the deadline of 31st of August. Once you have your quotas assigned, then you will be able to nominate until 31st of October. The deadline for side event applications, I have just heard that it will be 4th of September for non-accredited entities. September it will be very busy. There will be UN New York headquarters will focus on new urban agenda, which definitely have impacts on the climate work because of the interlinkage between the governance of the whole sustainability agendas. Local Renewables Congress will be in Japan. Our summit invitations, dialogues will advance by mid-September. Climate Change Summit will be very, very strong with agenda, participation, and outcomes. You are all welcome to join that. If not, you have not registered, this is will be a pivotal moment. Also, not just local authorities, but all major groups of the UNFCCC will be meeting there. Climate Change Expert Forum will also have a discussion on non-party stakeholders, therefore we will be active there. Climate Summit is COP in Bonn, but this year the other COP is on land degradation. The desertification COP is in Ordos. Mayors of Bonn and Strasbourg and Kalimane, as far as we know, will be speaking there in the local authorities roundtable. In the Climate Week in 18 to 24, you can expect a number of new announcements and a number of high-level meetings. There will be a number of agendas throughout this couple of days, especially also hosted by partners. Because they are still in the finalization, we are not going through the details in that presentation, but stay tuned to check the agendas, and we will also share updates via our regular mailings. And you will also can follow these updates on the website of the summit as well. We propose to have a webinar, the 4th webinar at the end of September, so that we can review our progress and check what are the areas that we are missing, or what are the areas that we focus. This would also particularly focus on the draft proposals for summit outcomes, and how we will showcase our proposals in terms of negotiation agendas. We will have an Ecomobility Congress in Kaohsiung, Chinese Taipei, in October. Deadline for Cities IPC conference to be held in Montreal in Edmonton in March 2018. The deadline for submissions are 6th of October. For the registration to the summit, we will close the website on the 6th of October. There is an important event in Sweden in early October on SDG 11 Ocean. This is particularly relevant for coastal zones and other areas. For the pre-COP, there will be certainly invitation to some leaders of local and subnational, local and regional governments and subnational governments overall. And we will update you on terms of agendas. Probably there will be a focal point meeting as a pre-COP with civil society and major groups with the presidencies. In October, there will be a Mayors Forum hosted by OECD in Seoul, which will focus on inclusive cities, and also climate change forum will be convened. And 31st of October is the deadline for confirmation the names of the delegations to Bonn Zone and Below Zone. With this, we would like to conclude this this webinar, at least the presentation part. Now we would be starting to receive your questions. Jisun will help us, and you can interact either via your microphone, or you can Skype and type your questions on the chat box or question box. So let's recall, our summit is on track. We have advanced with our partnerships with our partners. The 3 core elements are clear. Summit is the 12th of November. we will have a series of events under the brand Summit Dialogues, and for 2 full weeks we will be at the Cities and Regions Pavilion. Jason, the floor is yours. This is over from our side as presentation.
Thank you, Yunus. Thank you, Suzanne, both of you, for the informative presentation. And we have a very lively question panel going on at the box. Many of the participants today have asked relevant questions. So let me ask those questions on behalf of those questions raised. First question came from Carlos. So will the content of the declaration, the summit outcome document, will be introduced? That was Carlos's question. Eunice and Susan, would you want me to read all of the questions and then answer them all together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yunus, I would prefer one by one because they will be very different. Could you group them a bit, Jisun?
Okay, so regarding the declaration content, Carlos's question is the first one, and I think there is another question from Yan Ying, who says, when it comes to the delivery of this outcome document, who is responsible for this? So this could be also grouped together as part of this outcome document question. The rest of the questions, maybe I go later because slightly they have different thematic areas. So maybe the first two questions on the declaration, the summit outcome document.
Yeah, maybe I can provide a basic perspective as the LGMA focal point role, but Susan Nolden can also take this question as the host side as well. So first response to Carlos, we have not introduced yet and we will not introduce today, but definitely by the end of September you would receive a comprehensive, let's say, proposal. But it wouldn't be surprising because you know there's 4 themes, and we know the COP is primarily important as a precursor for the new round of facilitative dialogue that will start in 2018. And the logic is that how would we make sure a multi-level vision and holistic approach is enshrined in the revision of the NDCs so that climate action is accelerated. That will be the very basic part of it, and we would be providing the list of our commitments, our initiatives, and several figures, quantified figures about our progress, but primarily it would be focusing on these areas of holistic approach and multi-level governance, and especially the last one with NTC would be the most the core topic of that. Susan, any addition from your side?
Well, the important addition is in one of our last webinars, we had already asked the networks of our global advisory group for contributions to the declaration content-wise. The 4 topic areas have not changed, so please feel free to, within the next couple of days, still send contributions. We're in the process of drafting, so if you already have priorities which you did not add to the bowl yet, just give them to ICLEI, let's say until next Tuesday. That would be very, very helpful. This would be also at this early stage your possibility of inserting directly what you would need in the declaration. Secondly, Yang Ying has asked for the handover. Mm-hmm. Well, basically, the 2 hosts will be part of it, and further details have not been decided yet. This will be submitted to the host committee, and it will, of course, include your nominations for mayors present, and we will have a close look at the presence of high-ranking representatives. And there will be a very solemn moment at the end of the conference, and we are actually planning to make it a visible line-up of the city and regions networks.
Thank you, Susan.
just let me add, in terms of the delivery, let's recall the hosts of this kind of events will be mandated also throughout the events on the rest of the second week, including Marrakesh Partnership Dialogues, as well as a high-level segment intervention. So City of Bonn and then State of North Rhine-Westphalia and the LGMA Constituency will use these outcomes in selected events or other political processes, especially feeding to the UNFCCC and presenting to the ministers during the last week as well.
May I add, perhaps, Jizun, both North Rhine-Westphalia and Bonn are also in partnership with cities and regions all over the world. And we also hope to have these partners in Bonn who have multiple memberships in networks. So it will not be a German-only thing.
Thank you, Eunice. Thank you, Susan. A follow-up question on this just came from Yaning. So she clarified that her question, which is, who would be the authors to write the outcome document?
ICLEI, the host committee, and all of you via your contributions.
Thank you. Okay, so I think that's the grouping on of questions on the declarations, and then the second thematic area I think would be the formations of the summit. So there are several questions regarding the format of the summit. The first question would be Yaning's question as to, will there be only presentations or would there be panel discussions? And also there is another question as to, could you give more details on the local leaders summit format, in particular the initiatives segment? That question came from Marine. And yeah, I think for now let's focus on those questions on the format of the summit.
Yunus?
Well, I just recalled the slide that we used for the presentation. Opening and closing will be much more in terms of introduction and closing, but the real debates, technical dialogues or political dialogues will be in thematic 4 sessions, and we would like to have a bit interactive rounds in each of them. So there will be a spatial address where we'll be also have cases from different parts of the world and different perspectives. But then we will also try to highlight what are our concrete actions on forward, and this is the initiatives question. So we will try to use a diversity of session structures, panel or roundtable or presentations.
Perhaps to be very hands-on, because you're all trying to provide the best input possible. The initiatives panel will hopefully be crowded. It'll be like short time slots, and we would like to have an overwhelming variety of initiatives. So the best thing to have for this is one key visual per initiative, which can be projected, and a very strong claim and information given by the most high-ranking person possible. If your network, your project group will be on stage. As for panel discussions, we also count on having a bit of visibility, visualization in the background. So if you have short clips illustrating your messages in the panel and the speeches of your contributors, there will be, of course, short introductory like options, like 2 minutes, where people can say what they need to convey to the panel. But we also want to have something interactive. So if you have very short media, like videos, let's see, under 30 seconds, that would be of extreme help, or longer ones which can be cut, but the shorter the better, so that we have the interaction between the panelists and the moderators, and the moderators or chairs, session chairs, will be high-ranking representatives of cities, regions, and climate experts as well. So this won't this will be persons who have their expertise of their own. So there will be a very interactive happening on stage, underlined and highlighted by media. This is what we target.
Thank you, Susan, and also thank you, Eunice, for your clarifications and answers. The next thematic area of questions, I believe, would be on the pavilion. So this question comes from Zabine. Is the exhibition space still open for applications, and is it for free? And also on the pavilion, from Eugenia, says this question: would it be possible to use that meeting space, that pavilion space, as an internal meeting space instead of hosting events? And related to this, another question from Bong Hee, who asks if one wants to organize an event at the Citizen Regions Pavilion, do we have to pay?
So maybe I can take these in terms of the pavilion management. As we said, we would be circulating the templates to the Global Advisor Group, especially, and then the LGMA partners as well. We have, for the pavilion space, received significant funding from the German Minister of Environment, BMUB, just like we received a similar one for the whole summit from the BMZ, the German Minister of Cooperation. We're still trying to map in terms of the whole costs of the facilities that we will use and the management needs. Therefore, we would check how much additional cost contribution would be necessary or not. And therefore, you would receive the templates for applications. When you receive it next week by the latest, you would see whether we would be asking for any cost contribution or not. I don't want to immediately judge as of today, because we are still assessing our budget for the whole program. So we would do our best in terms of making this clear in the application process. And there was also a question from Eugenia, as far as I can understand. The meeting space in the pavilion could be used for internal meetings. This is possible. The closed meeting room, those who reserve this area have their initiatives, or they have the responsibility to manage that slot without disturbing the physical space too much, of course. How to manage this, whether it's an invitation only or whether it's a closed, that they could decide on how to manage this part. And I think this is more or less covering both of the questions.
Thank you, Eunice. I have a next set of thematic questions on, this time, invitations, and this question comes from Steve, and then it just says invitation to mayors. So, if you don't mind, Steve, could you let us know what exactly you would like to ask on this invitations question?
And maybe we can continue with Paolo. He's also asking about registration as well. This can also be a similar topic.
Okay. So if you don't mind, Pierre asked this question: will ICLE make sure that partners of the Global Advisory Group and speakers have the badges for accessing the bond zone during the Leaders Summit, or should should register them to the bond zone badges through the UNFCCC? I mean, this is a question that.
So this. We're in the phase of consultation with the Secretariat. We know that for sure, because of our partnership, on the day of the summit, the whole list of participants would go through our registration page, which means that we will make sure they are delivered to the UNSCC as one set. But some of those names, we know they may already have accreditations to the bond zone by their respective partners. So we will do their best how to manage this and to prevent double counting or double registration, which is what the UNSCC doesn't want. It's basically that there will also be others who wish to visit the bond zone. They can also access to the summit, but we want to make sure our our invitations or invitees or our delegations, which are the members of the Global Advisory Group, have privileged access to the summit meeting zone or the plenary at all times, but we'll also have to give some slots or reserve some seats for those who are interested about the agenda or the summit without necessarily being part of it. So you can imagine thousands of people are there. They are from different countries or different sectors who may not necessarily be aware of the local and regional government, so they may be interested, but we would like to make sure that primarily this is a summit of the constituents that we are working together since the beginning and the partners. So I think, as you have noticed in the deadlines this week, UNFCCC will receive the bond zone applications, and I think they would be also making some clarities on the next days in terms of how to manage the whole bond zone area. Depending on that, that's why we would like to have additional webinar at the end of September so that we can check whether all is clear and whether there's any additional measures we have to take onwards.
Thank you. Susan?
Sorry. Perhaps it is, I think this question is targeting also the question Yunus said, the registration for the summit will be valid for the Sunday. So if you and your organization target other appointments in the bond zone, other days, it would be highly recommended to achieve a registration separately as well for your members. We do not think that the majority of the registrations for the summit will be valid before and after the Sunday.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Eunice. Pierre actually asked another logistics questions related to the reimbursement of the travel and accommodation. Can travel and accommodations costs for speakers be reimbursed? Would you like to take this question?
We have reserved a certain number of reimbursement for speakers and also the participants. So we're in the process of advancing with our partners on this front. But we wish to make as majority of them as covered as possible. But we would also expect those who can be in a position to do so can also support their own speakers if possible. So we have to go in a case-by-case manner.
Thank you.
And of course, there will be a high priority on speakers coming from least developed countries and the global south when we make these priority lists.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Eunice. Steve, I'm going to unmute you so that you can ask your invitation-related questions.
Thank you, Jisun. And thank you, Eunice and Susanna. Very, very informative webinar. I'm just a little bit uncertain about how we can track the status of all of the invitations that have already been sent out, and therefore how to determine who needs to be added to the third batch of invitations. I think the slide that you showed us really just showed us what had been sent, but we haven't seen anything yet, I think, on acceptances. Can you just tell me how that system's going to work, please?
Steve, thanks. This is a webinar that is announced at the LGMA Constituency, Friends of Cities, and other partners. So definitely we have shared a different, more detailed list with full list of who's invited and who has confirmed so far. And we will circulate another update. This will circulate by the 15th of August. We'll circulate another list by the end of August, and we will see where we are advancing with the track, and especially this is the time when we will also note who requests funding, who is planning to receive funding for travel and accommodation. So there will be further communication both to ICLE regional leaders and as well as the partners who are working with us. But in this presentation, we wanted to keep it a bit more high level and much more general.
Thank you, Eunice. Next set of questions. The next set of questions I believe would be on initiatives. So Yaning asked this question as to any further information on each of the initiatives and what activities they would entail.
Well, this is also what we want to track. We have already received a couple of proposals in the June round. We will try to clarify with our partners what exact scope and concrete outcomes so that we can sum up. It's impossible to expect all initiatives will be presented by verbal presentations. As Susan Alden explained, we would like to promote them as presented as commitments or initiatives, but in the summit we have to prioritize some of them, and we would try to provide additional opportunities through online resources, social media, and the Pavilion for further communication of initiatives. But definitely we have to screen those applications to a certain extent.
Thank you, Yunus. The next question actually regards to the list of speakers and the version of the draft agenda. So the question is, when will we have the final list of speakers of the local and regional leaders summit? And also, is the version of 15th August the latest as of now?
On the 15th of August, we have already informed our partners that we would be having the host committee meeting on the 25th of August. So that was the reason why we circulated to the partners in advance and asked them whether they have additional corrections or updates. We have received some feedbacks. And the host committee has also gone through this list. And now we are this week going back to our partners, checking whether their nominations are still interested or available, or would they like to propose another one based on our assessment that we want to ensure a balance in terms of the type of the local and regional governments, the diversity in the geographical space, the visibility of the networks, and the gender balance. So these are the four key parameters that we want to seek a balance in all levels and all these four elements. And it means there may be some screening, of course, also because we are in one single day and the total amount of time is also clear. So we would ask the flexibility of all our partners, but we have to make sure these parameters are well covered. So we will get back to speakers list this week again.
And it's also a question of like feasibility. As we are in the main conference area of the Marrakesh Partnership, some framework conditions are fixed, as is, for example, the number of translation booths. So we will have individual discussions with some of you also about speakers and languages and how we can apply this to this place, which is really a big step forwards for us organizations to be inside the conference zone in a UNFCCC conference. But we have to adapt to the conditions we find there.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Yunus. I think we can move on to the next set of questions, which are more on the background and the general and more broad in that sense, which is the first question comes from Yan Ying. Just a short introduction on the constitution of the Global Advisory Group, who are in this group. Basically, that's a question. And also during Yunus's presentation, I believe several global frameworks were mentioned. And then can you give us more information on the global frameworks? That's a question. And then I think related to this, Kobe also provided a more comment / question as to the linkages with the CBD. So as you know, the Global Cities and Regions Biodiversity Summits took place parallel to the CBD COPs, and then related to this, it would be great to demonstrate such linkages at this opportunity as well. So what Kobe proposed is that between ICLEI, the City of Bonn, and the CBD Secretariat to have a trilateral meeting on this in the next weeks.
Regarding the Global Advisory Group, I see Yanning is representing the Global Covenant, and we are already in touch with a number of other colleagues from this initiative that ICLEI is also partner, and a number of others as well. So in this picture, you see the logos here are all part of the Global Advisory Group. So the representative of these organizations are all participating in this design of this process. We have spatial featured event processes under 2 coalition, and Global Covenant, so they have a unique role in the process. And the others are represented with their logos. They have nominated their representatives to the group, and Yanin can also connect with them. In terms of the global agendas, as Kobi mentioned, this first session, the one after the opening, new global frameworks, and of course the commitments over the past couple of years, the SDGs in particular, the 2030 agenda, the new urban agenda that some sustainability community are not aware, but of course local and regional governments have been at the core of it, or thematic processes like renewables, biodiversity, procurement. There are a lot of progress in all these areas, and we want this diversity of topics to be mentioned, that it's not just mitigation and adaptation, or when we make a mitigation adaptation, there are benefits and positive impacts, or sometimes trade-off from other areas as well, so that this holistic approach, this is the new era of climate action, has to take this into account. In most cases, we have seen a lot of these cross-cutting synergies at the local and regional level in some areas, but in the global arenas or the global process, they tend to think in silos. Therefore, we would like to highlight once again the benefit of one agenda for sustainable development, and climate, of course, a key precursor, but a number of parallel processes could not be ignored. And the pavilion, of course, we will make some more thematic discussions in that front, and I think we will have some high levels, of course, as Kobi mentioned. CBD is one of those, in particular, that this is one of the very unique global processes where there's a concrete action plan for local and regional governments, and a spatial recognition, so that we would like to make this to be much more prominently visible in the UNFCCC negotiators, so that they can inspire and they can have some fertilizer initiatives and processes in the way we're engaged in the global agendas. And I think that's the reason why biodiversity is important. So we will talk with Kobi and the CBD secretary definitely for that.
Thank you, Yunus. We are having the last set of questions. One from Carlos, just to recap on the to follow up on the speaker's reimbursement question as to like how many actually speakers could be taken or covered for the financial support. And then it's not really related, but the last question, I believe, before we close is from Pierre's question as to the Summit Dialogues venue. Would it take place in the Bula zone? And are you planning to have any city representatives speaking in the Bula zone space?
For the reimbursement, we have a number of partners who provide resources. Primarily, the BMZ is the core funder of the reimbursement of the participants, but we have also Global Covenant of Mayors, we have Engagement Global, we have Sparkasse, who are all participating or contributing to this, also this budget. And we are advancing our dialogues in terms of the lists and in terms of the potential speakers, or even if they're not speakers, they would still have funding, of course. So we are advancing on that, so we can come back to the proposed nominations from each partners soon, but this has to be accelerated in the next couple of days. So far, we have not made any concrete arrangement yet, but there are certain preparatory steps have taken forward, and the lists that Carlos shared are those among the priority lists, that prior to the individuals who would receive funding, so they should be a bit relaxed in that sense. And Pierre Paolo, about the Bula zone, be aware Bula zone is very strictly controlled in terms of access of non-party stakeholders or observers. So we as those observers will have limited access in terms of numbers. There will be certain roundtables. These are mainly related to UNFCCC negotiation process. During the negotiation process, there are sometimes opportunities for interventions as speakers or constituency inputs. This is a bit clarified towards the last couple of days or a bit couple of weeks. But we as observers or partners will not organize events in the Bula zone. So all these dialogues will either take place in the Bonn zone, either at the pavilion or other pavilions like European Pavilion, Japan Pavilion, Indonesia Pavilion or Moroccan Pavilion, whatever, or outside. There are also events outside the Bonn zone, in the city of Bonn. And maybe this could also be an opportunity. I know we are coming to the end of our round, but maybe, and it's considering that we have covered most of the questions, Susan Nolden, would you like to add anything about City of Bonn and the whole broad concept of the Bonn preparing to host the COP as a city?
Only briefly, Yunus, because everybody has to rush to their next meetings. So firstly, in addition to what you said in the beginning, UNFCCC has expanded their registration time for non-admitted organizations for the Bonn zone a bit. So you can create an account for registration until the 4th of September, which is next Monday. And you have to finalize your application until the 8th of September, which is next Friday, I think, Thursday or Friday. And well, basically, Bonn is getting prepared. The two zones are identified. Construction works have started in the Rheinauer Park, where the Bonn zone will be built, temporary buildings. The BMUB is setting up 25,000 square meters right there, and another 25,000 which will be part of the Bula zone below Deutsche Welle, between Deutsche Welle and the Rheinauer Park. So basically the two zones are set, and now the building works are going forth. There will be shuttle services bus shuttle services between the zones. There will be a nice footpath walk within 20 minutes or so. You can come from zone to zone. There will be many events within the cities, cultural events, civil society events, a People's Climate Summit, a Conference of the Youth, which will be in the beginning. There will be artworks at exhibitions and public events. There are many event organizers which have put their events outside the conference zone to secure accessibility for people who have no registration, because you could imagine the capacities are limited. We're talking about an 8,000 people capacity for the Bonn zone and about like 12,000 people, between 8 and 12,000 for the Bula zone. I think 12,000 was the number. So it'll be a smaller COP than Paris, obviously, but it will be a very condensed COP. Everything is easy accessible. If you have not booked your accommodation yet, you should go for the Tourism and Congress Office. Jisun and Yunus have the contact data and will send them to the participants quite quickly. We target accommodating participants in a radius of like 1 hour commutation by public transports. Within 1 hour, you can reach even Düsseldorf by train, and you can commute from the main train station to the conference site in about 10 minutes by public transports. So that's quite easy accessible. If you remember Paris, many of us spent over 1 hour commuting to Le Bourget that time. I think most of you in the Global Advisory Group will know Bonn, so I'm not giving the touristical PR block now. If you have questions, you're most welcome to address them now, or to just send us email, perhaps copying Yunus and sending to me. And we'll be happy to direct you to the place or the person to help you.
Thank you, Susan, for your kind introduction and presentation and updating us on that. Before we close, I see a hand raised by Yanning. I unmuted you. Do you have any further questions? Yanning, are you there? Okay, I guess not. So, Yunus, before we close, are there any final remarks that you would like to give us?
Just to recall that the citiesandregions.org will be updated and especially be the hub for information sharing on the next couple of days, as well as the COP23 information hub of COP23. So we would suggest to get back to these for more updates, but you would hear more communication from us, especially the Global Advisory Group members, in the next couple of days in terms of the summit, the pavilion, and the speakers. So thanks a lot for all your contribution, both throughout the conference preparations or the summit preparations, as well as your active engagement to this webinar, and we look forward to continuing our dialogue and hopefully generate a nice agenda in Bonn.
Thank you, Eunice. And with that, I believe we would like to close the webinar now. Very conscious of the time, we're slightly going over 1 hour. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your contributions and participation at the third webinar on the LGMA COP23 preparatory webinar today. And I now pronounce this webinar closed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jisun.
Yes,
Great moderation.
exactly. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.